Fresh from his defeat at the hands of Liz Goerke, Hoch headed for St. Louis, where he embarked on the longest marriage of his career. This is Tomb Snoopers. All right, who you gonna call?
Ooh,
Tomb Snooper.
Yes.
All right, Patty, how are you doing?
I'm good. Is that a 1-800 number or an 888 number?
Oh, yeah, we should. It doesn't even occur to me to have like a toll-free number to call anymore.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, when I was with my first ghost tour company had a toll-free number that was just all over the bus, and people would call that, and that was how they booked their tickets.
Right.
I don't think they even had an option to book online in those days.
See, you could set up a voicemail, and then we could play some of the responses from listeners.
Yeah, look at the 800 Tomb Snoopers. That's a few extra digits. We'll figure something out, though. Yeah, get a comment line, a hotline.
Yes, the Tomb Snoopers hotline. Where do you need us to go?
Or call 900 Tomb Snoopers for some hot grave robbing action tonight. What are you wearing? I love shrouds.
We all of a sudden became OnlyFans. Tomb Snoopers.
When I was having trouble with Patreon, no, it wasn't Patreon, it was PayPal for occasionally having raffles.
Oh, that's
they decided I was a
right.
gambling kingpin, and my landlady said I should just do the history stuff on OnlyFans.
Oh dear, that's amazing.
Well, we all got to hustle these days.
Yeah, we do.
After all,
make that side hustle, that income, that passive income you need monthly now.
So, all right. So, in between recording these episodes, we had MysterioCon, where we got to do a live talk, and that was so much fun.
It was lovely. It was wonderful to get live feedback from folks on how they feel about the podcast. So thank you, everybody.
Yeah, that was great. Thanks for those of you who came out. Those of you who aren't aware, MysterioCon is the Mysterious Chicago convention that we do every year, and we will be posting. You've possibly heard by now if you're on the Patreon. There's we recorded like a live episode where we just chatted. There was no new information that is vital to understanding the Hawk story. It's strictly bonus materials, but it's up there on the Patreon. And it was a lot of fun, just like be able to hang out and interact with people live. You and I interact a lot, and usually it's in a setting like this, where it's just into a couple of microphones or in a radio station studio. It's rare that we get that. We're both normally used to working for live audiences,
absolutely,
and getting that immediate feedback.
Yeah, it was really nice. It does change the energy for everybody, I think. That was great. Thank you.
So, yeah, we had a good time with that. So, let's see, to recap, Johann Hoch, after 2 years in a Chicago jail, got back, worked in the Pullman shop for a bit, then married Liz Goerke, who encouraged him to get into hypnosis. But she ended up saying, "Watch out, Schmidt, I'll hypnotize you," at which point he left with her ex-husband's overcoat.
I love seeing him with his tail between his legs.
Yeah.
Or apparently maybe part of the coat, but still.
Right. So, at this point, he took off for St. Louis. What led him to St. Louis, I'm not really sure, but when he first showed up, he went to a machinist shop, and instead of going to who you would normally apply for a job to, he went right to the boss and said, "I just came to town looking for work on building the St. Louis World's Fair, but those jobs are already taken. Do you have anything for me? I'll work for 25 cents an hour."
Ooh.
Which, was, I think, about the going rate, maybe a little bit lower at the time. And the boss just liked his nerve. He said, "This guy's got some attitude to him. Let's give him a job." So he got that job under the name of Jacob Schmidt, and working around the office, everybody got to know him as a big talker very quickly. He would tell all these stories about how he'd made a fortune working in Chicago, then lost the entire fortune working in Chicago. He would brag about what a great tinsmith he was, and everybody started just joking about Schmidt and his hot air. But around at the same time, right after he got there, he started going to lodge meetings. This is what you did in your free time back then, was go to lodge meetings. I'm not even sure. I tried to look up what kind of lodge this was. It was just kind of like similar to like a Moose Lodge or an Elks Lodge, but specifically, I think, for Germans who were working in the area. Well, one of his first nights there, he met a woman named Mary Becker. Ooh. She was Austrian widow. Yeah, there's always another Mary. This was another one. I don't think she had a second name that I could use to differentiate her from all of the other Marys. But they met at the lodge meeting and decided to get married that same night.
Oh, and you said, I'm sorry, I cut you off when you were saying she was an Austrian widow?
Yeah, I believe she was an Austrian widow, yes. Okay. She was also about 10 years older than Hoch was, just like Liz had been. And he ended up married to her for nearly a year.
Oh, he sunk some time into this one.
He really did, and she didn't even have that much money. I really do get the impression, reading through this, that he was almost trying to straighten up and fly right. Oh. Having been humiliated, let's face it, by Liz Goerke, he decided, I can't do this anymore. I'm getting too old for this kind of trick. And went and got a regular job and just got a regular wife. And by all accounts, was pointed out as a model husband by all the people around him. But he couldn't quite get away from everything, because when he moved in with her, he was calling himself John Schultz. Uh-oh. And that's kind of an anomaly in it, because in almost every other case, the names that he used were names that he had taken from his victims' ex-husbands. In this case,
he couldn't this time.
Yeah, this time they couldn't. But this time, there is no obvious source for this one. There were some stories eventually that he had married or made away with or murdered a woman named Mary Schultz and her daughter in Indiana around 1900, but he was in jail at the time. So that one he's probably off the hook for. Except that it could provide some kind of a source. If somebody was just getting the dates about her wrong, it would provide a source for where he got this name Schultz. Okay. But it's also just such a common name.
Yeah.
It's not like he was using Schwanzara, which is Mary's son-in-law's last name. I think it was the son-in-law. I kind of lose track of everybody's family tree in here someplace. But Schwanzara, by 1905, was working in Chicago. In fact, he was working at the Congress Hotel. He was a waiter in the Pompeii room, which would have been someplace on the first floor, right beneath where we were just doing Tomb Snoopers Live.
Oh, boy.
So, and apparently he did run into Hoch at some point, and made some accusations around there, and Hoch just kind of blew him off. Huh. But a couple of Mary's siblings would later write, everybody in the family was completely taken in by this smooth-talking guy, except for me. Everybody thought they were the one who doubted it the whole time.
I knew it. I could see right through him. Uh-huh.
So he was working under one name, operating under another. And I'll just have to read, there was, in this case, the St. Louis newspapers had some remarkably good data about this stuff. The St. Louis papers, after the Hoch story broke a few years later, were able to interview other people who lived in the boarding house. They were able to interview Mary's children and a lot of people who had worked inside of the factory with him. In particular, there's one guy who will write... Schmidt was a queer duck. This is from J.W. Dawson, who was the foreman of the shop. He said, Schmidt was a queer duck. I think he was crazy. He acted strange. He tried to boss the men and put on such airs that they laughed at him. He would cuss them when they jollied him. One Saturday night, he told me his wife had died in Chicago and that he would have to go up there. He said it was hard luck and would cost him money. He was a stingy man. Once in a while, he would buy the boys who were with him a glass of beer, but that didn't happen often. He would yell at the fellows working with him so that you could hear him all over the shop. Oh. He worked mostly at the riveting machine, riveting tin together. Once he told me a hard luck story and said that he had lost $20,000 in Chicago, but he rambled so in telling the story that I can't remember the facts. He used to talk to the boys about the money he had made and lost, but his stories differed so much and he wouldn't give details. Schmidt's hot air became a byword at the shop. I never thought that he was a cruel man or one who would commit a daring crime. The nervous manner and his reddish curly hair are two characteristics which ought to enable the police to find him. This is interesting. He mentions this reddish curly hair.
Okay.
In such photographs as we have of him, it looks like he has much darker hair than that. And... I don't know if he was just darkening it by himself or something like that, or if it's just the way that the camera adds it. But nobody else that I know of refers to him as having reddish curly hair, which makes you wonder just a little bit if they had the wrong guy here. But there's enough paperwork in this case, and the names and everything line up, that I'm assuming that it was actually him.
Well, and especially the parts I would imagine with winning or having money and losing money and
sort of
prattling
it's all the same stories that he would always tell.
Right.
Now, that's also, we know that he was going by both the name Schmidt and Schultz, and they figured this out at the factory, too. There's another reporter, Edwin Meyer, who worked there, who was his helper there, said, "I'll never forget the time I called Schmitty Schultz. We were working at the tin machine when Bob, a fellow who used to work around here, called to me. He says, 'Go to Schmitty, tell him that a woman downstairs is acting for Mr. Schultz. That's Schmitty.' I just walked up to him and said, 'Hello, Schultz, a woman wants you.' He turned on me and shook both his fists in my face. 'Don't you call me Schultz, I beat you,' he cried. His face worked terrible, and I thought he would hit me, but he didn't, and after that we wanted to tease him, and we called him Schultz. He was a pretty good fellow when he wasn't excited. Then he cussed. Schmidt talked broken German, and when he got excited he couldn't talk plain." Another person said, "I worked alongside of him for a year. He wasn't well liked. He tried to boss the men too much, and then we laughed at the tales he told. He said he got rich and that as soon as he got some more money, he would start a tin shop of his own. He wouldn't stand for being called Schultz. Some of the boys saw him downtown one time dressed like a dude. He wore a long coat and a plug hat. We laughed at that, too. He didn't try to dress swell around the shop, but he always wore a clean white collar and tie, no matter how dirty the work was." So I love that. We saw him dressed like a dude.
I wonder if that long coat was Goerke. Was it Goerke?
Yeah, you got to wonder if that was Heinrich Goerke's old overcoat.
Yeah.
Goerke or Goerke. I apologize to anybody who has that name, but the name that you're using right now may not be the way that they pronounced it at the time either. I really have. It's spelled like. It's amazing how many ways they found to spell it. Sometimes it's spelled with ending in a K. Sometimes it's a K-E.
Right.
So.
That's what I imagined.
Yeah, it's usually it is spelled Goerke. The gravestone at Graceland Cemetery is lacking the E at the end.
So Goerke.
Yeah, just Goerke. I usually just go with Goerke, but sometimes I'll call her Goerke as well. I figure out if I say it enough different ways, I'll get it right occasionally anyway. It's kind of like the broken clock being right twice a day. So this particular marriage lasted for just about an entire year. They got married around around April of 1902, and lasted till just after St. Patrick's Day. Now, right around St. Patrick's Day, Hoch lost his job. And apparently, I think one version of the story is he was starting to talk about forming a union.
Oh, what?
So they got rid of him, and he took it really hard. So shortly after they got rid of him, he and Mary went to go see the St. Patrick's Day parade. It was not exactly on St. Patrick's Day. It was the day closest to the Sunday closest to St. Patrick's Day. It was a bitterly cold, rainy day, possibly snowy in St. Louis that year. I've never been in St. Louis when it wasn't boiling hot, so it's hard for me to imagine St. Louis getting a lot of snow. But apparently it happened, and they decided to blow off going to the parade and instead went to a tavern where they each had a few glasses of beer. And that night, Mary got sick.
Oh,
and
dear.
This illness didn't seem to last very long. He was able to write to his children-in-law and say, "Oh, well, we were thinking of moving very soon, but it's not going to happen now because your mother is taken sick. It's her kidneys." And then the next day writing, "Well, we definitely won't be moving now. She's passed away."
Oh!
So,
Mary.
Yeah, so the doctor was brought in, and the doctor signed off on it being uremia. And once again, I'm terrified that I'm pronouncing that entirely incorrectly. But some of the children a couple of months later started saying, "We got suspicions about this guy," mainly because of how Hoch acted after she died. Now, they said that they had never seen him drunk before, but afterwards he would come home in great hilarity and suddenly was all dressed up, flashy, borrowing money from everybody he could for the funeral expenses. Now, he cashed in a life insurance policy on her that got him something like $400. He borrowed a couple $100 from various acquaintances around the boarding house and said, "I need help money with the funeral expenses." Then, as soon as the funeral was over, he just disappeared without having paid any of that stuff. So the doctor was brought back in on the case. The children said, we've got suspicions. This guy might have killed her or something. And at the time, the doctor decided not to sign off on that, as he figured every symptom just looked like natural causes to me. Okay. A lot of it would have also been explained by arsenic poisoning, but if she had been taking arsenic, there are also some symptoms that I would expect that I didn't see. And also, one of the children's big One of the children's big pieces of evidence that he brought was that she liked it better when I made her coffee than when Schultz, her husband, made her coffee. She said that the way that he made it, it tasted too bitter.
Right.
Which sounded like a clue, but arsenic is tasteless. It wouldn't affect the taste of the coffee.
And he just might have been bad at making coffee.
He might have just been terrible at making coffee. Yeah.
As someone who has been told that. So
none of the clues really added up, and the doctor just figured at the time, well, I guess that's that. They just don't like the guy. And signed off, and that was it. She was buried, and Hoch went off and left the St. Louis altogether and just started going off on a whole other spree.
What did he gain from this?
A few $100.
Okay.
It was probably, all told, he probably made about $500, $500 or $600. That's for a year's worth of work on this one. So it's not one of his better attempts, not one of his more useful attempts. And meanwhile, there was a case right in the middle of it. There was a woman named Sophia Finke. Sophia, she had this story. She lived out in the suburbs and had a story that one day in September of 1902, she married this guy that she met at church who then deserted her. And her picture was in all of the papers. She even said that she had books with his name written inside of it. And there were like volumes about hypnosis. And just about all of her story really seems to work.
Oh.
Sophia Finke or Panka, she went by a couple of different last names. But she had pictures in the paper, she gave interviews, just about all of it seems to add up pretty well, except for the fact that Hoch was married to somebody else at the time. He was in St. Louis. Now, theoretically, it's a tight enough time frame that she was talking about that maybe when he said, my wife's dead, I have to go to Chicago, maybe he went out to the suburbs, and whilst in the suburbs, had a real quickie marriage with this older woman, Sophia, and then deserted her with all her money. It's theoretically possible. I list this one as a maybe, but the press made a big show about she was coming into downtown Chicago to identify Hoch, and then she just disappears from the story.
Right.
Which suggests to me that she showed up, saw the guy, like, oh, that's not him.
And they just didn't reflect on it again.
Right. They the papers just kind of dropped it. That's usually how it happened. They would build these things up, but when it turned out not to happen, it would be in her local paper and nothing else.
I wonder what that's like.
If I'm remembering right, she was in Aurora. Maybe I should check out the Aurora microfilm.
Wow.
There's some things I got to do in Aurora anyway, microfilm wise.
Sure.
There's a whole Aurora Ripper story that nobody's really covered well enough.
And presumably, because Aurora had the roundhouse, there would be trains between Chicago.
Oh yeah, there were trains. It was a pretty easy commute back and forth. I mean, there were people in the H.H. Holmes case who lived out in Aurora. Any number of stuff, any number of possible connections. So this one, it might work. I don't think it probably does, but it might. So I kind of left that one. In the maybes. But it suggests to me the fact that the newspapers didn't say anything. I was able to find plenty of paperwork on her, but no real smoking gun.
Is it possible that she didn't want to get involved, realizing that there were women who didn't survive his cons?
No, but by that time he was safely behind bars. By the time she was telling these stories, so hard to say. There were plenty of other people running the same kind of scam that he was too. So if one of the newspapers reported that his name was in all of the books, they might have just been mistaken about that. It was probably hastily scrawled. They might have been getting this secondhand. It's not really confirmed by other ones. But right around the same time, there was another rumor that he married a woman named Margaret Kelly in Appleton, Wisconsin. And the timeline doesn't quite work out. It would be right at the tail end of when he was married. Mary Becker died March 20th. This rumored marriage to Margaret Kelly is also March of 1903, so it would have been a very fast turnaround. And I think that the dates actually overlap, but there wasn't ever good enough paperwork on it that I could say one way or the other. At the same time, there's talk about him marrying someone under the name C.O. Schultz, named Wilhelmina Rummler in Nyack, New York.
Ooh.
And that one got reported a lot, but I don't think it really works out timeline-wise for him to be real. So at that point, he just went back to the Pullman shops.
Oh.
Just went back in Chicago and spent the summer of 1903 courting two different women at the same time, but in exactly the same way. Well, 2 that we know of. There were quite possibly more, but it was all through matrimonial ads. And both of them he told pretty much the same story. He says, I'm a wealthy widower. I had a wife and 3 children, but they all died. There was a train accident that killed one of them. I had them all cremated at Graceland Cemetery. And was writing pretty much the exact same letters to both of these 2 women. A woman named Minnie Podolsky and a woman named Anna Hendricks. Oh. And Minnie Podolsky, I think eventually he found out that she didn't have any money. And
that'll dampen his enthusiasm.
Right. I'll have to go back into the letters for that one. But a lot of the letters are actually on file. These letters would be turned over to a newspaper writer named Evelyn Campbell. Oh. And this is the introduction here of Evelyn Campbell into the story. She's one of my favorite characters in the whole Hoch saga. She was a writer for the Chicago Evening American. Her real name was Nana Springer. Sometimes she was credited under her real name, but nobody who had a column with their name on it was writing under their own name in those days. Everybody was using aliases.
For what purpose? Just to...
I'm not even sure. Just because it's got more of a catchy name or something.
Right.
Or it would enable them to do 2 or 3 columns for the same paper under different ones. But it was fairly open that sometimes they would say Nana Springer alias Evelyn Campbell next to her picture. But one thing about the Hearst papers, Hearst was very good about bringing in women writers. He thought that women writers brought in women readers, and he didn't just have them doing like household hint columns or anything. Evelyn Campbell was working in all kinds of cases. She was interviewing all of the murderers. Huh. She was doing investigative stuff. Well, they would have called stunt reporting then. Like, there were a lot of rumors that women who stayed at the YWCA were getting robbed. So she stayed at the YWCA for a while and to see if she got robbed. And she did.
What?
I haven't read that exact column. I can't remember. There was a great line that she had about it, like what the Y really stands for. We'll have to get into Evelyn Campbell quite a bit later because people were more willing to go to her. A lot of these people who had been swindled by Hoch or nearly swindled by Hoch were more willing to go to her than they were to go to the police, who didn't really have any women they could go to, any other women.
Huh, I love that.
So she ended up in possession of all these letters that Hoch had been writing throughout the summer of 1903. In the case of Minnie Podolsky, the whole thing fell apart, but Anna Hendricks, the other woman, ended up marrying him, and she would go on to play a major role in the case. So this one, to do the research for this, the good thing is there were a lot of really good papers in St. Louis that got digitized. So they were able to, these papers like had a picture of the house where he had lived, it had a picture of Mary Becker, it had pictures of Hoch, it had interviews with all sorts of people who had known him. We could put a lot about this together, but even in all of that, we don't really know much about what Mary Becker was like, other than that she was known to blow off a parade to go have a beer if it was raining too hard.
Wow.
And liked to hang out in lodge meetings.
Oh,
so
good for her.
All right, so with this, there is some paperwork on file that we'll be able to post about the wedding, and that's really about it. I think there's probably more data in other St. Louis papers that haven't been digitized. Last time I was looking up St. Louis stuff was for the H.H. Holmes book, and I remember going to a couple of different places in St. Louis to get in their microfilm rooms. But for all of it, there was only a couple of sentences of new data about it. So the papers that we've got on Hoch and St. Louis are very good.
Right.
The articles if there was a better article, it probably would have been circulated into other ones that have been digitized by now. Not necessarily, but it's enough. I had enough St. Louis stuff that I was pretty comfortable moving forward. I didn't feel... It's like in West Virginia. There's probably more articles out there in West Virginia, but I've got enough that I didn't need to travel.
Fair. Yeah.
So, all right, so this brings us Hoch back in Chicago for one more year of marriages.
Oh, boy.
And at least one more murder to go.
Oh, no. Look out, ladies.
So, all right, so this brings us to the a wrap for the next Tomb Snoopers. We're just about to get to the point where Hoch is going to become a media sensation, and the story really begins when all these stories started coming out of the woodwork and all the pieces started to come together. So I will see you next week. I'm Adam.
I'm Patty.
Thanks for joining us here on Tomb Snoopers.
See you next time.
As always, there's lots more data, including all the stuff we've talked about today, over at patreon.com/tombsnoopers, plus early access and a whole lot more.